Picture a dragoon in the early 1800s. His primary weapon is empty, the enemy is closing in, and it's pouring rain. He draws his last resort pistol and pulls the trigger. The flint strikes the steel, getting only weak sparks and a dead click. That dead click was the fatal flaw of the flintlock. To fire, a piece of flint had to strike a frizzen to create sparks, which then had to land in a small, completely exposed pan of loose gunpowder. If the air was damp, or worse, if it was raining, that powder turned to sludge, and the weapon became entirely useless. To address the logistical strain of equipping a growing military, the United States government introduced its first standardized Marshall pistols shortly after the Revolutionary War. Before this, guns were built one at a time. If a mechanism broke on the frontier, you needed a gunsmith to hand-carve a replacement piece. By standardizing the manufacturing process, cavalry units could take identical, mass-produced parts and simply swap them out in the field to keep their weapons functional. Making parts interchangeable meant dragoons could easily repair a broken pistol miles away from an armory. But a perfectly repaired flintlock still wouldn't fire in a thunderstorm. That lingering vulnerability to the weather set off a century-long chain of mechanical evolution. In 1842, the military adopted a direct mechanical solution to the weather problem, the percussion cap. Instead of a shower of sparks over an open pan, this system used a tiny, sealed copper cup filled with a shock-sensitive compound. Seated over a hollow nipple, the hammer struck it directly, sending a jet of flame into the main powder charge. During the Mexican-American War, soldiers realized they could draw their sidearms in a torrential downpour and actually trust the weapon to discharge. The sealed cap kept the moisture out entirely. The ignition was now practically weatherproof, but a soldier still only had one bullet in the barrel, and reloading a muzzleloader in the middle of a chaotic cavalry charge was nearly impossible. The cap-and-ball revolver utilized a rotating cylinder with 6 chambers. Cavalry could fire 6 consecutive times from horseback. But the loading process was agonizingly slow. Every chamber was separately packed with powder, a lead ball, and a cap. Having 6 rounds gave soldiers a massive advantage in short, violent skirmishes. Yet, once those chambers were empty, the operator was left dangerously exposed while fumbling with powder flasks and tiny copper caps during an active firefight. To solve the reloading bottleneck, the military adopted the single-action cartridge revolver shortly after the Civil War. The loose powder and separate caps were replaced by the newly perfected, self-contained metallic cartridge. Soldiers could now slide complete, weatherproof brass cartridges directly into the back of the cylinder. It was incredibly durable, allowing cavalrymen stationed in the harsh, dusty terrains of the late 19th century frontier to empty and reload their weapons in seconds. Even with fast reloads, a soldier still had to manually pull the hammer back with their thumb before every single shot. Near the end of the 19th century, the double-action revolver solved that mechanical delay. In a double-action system, pulling the trigger performs 2 operations. It cocks the hammer back and then releases it, all in one continuous fluid motion. You could now fire as fast as you could pull the trigger. During the Philippine-American War, troops were frequently ambushed in dense, low-visibility jungle environments. In those sudden, unexpected engagements, shaving fractions of a second off a soldier's reaction time proved vital. The ultimate automation of the sidearm arrived in 1911 with the adoption of the semi-automatic .45 caliber pistol, designed by John Moses Browning. Browning's design used recoil energy. Firing forced the slide backward to automatically eject the casing, load a fresh round, and cock the hammer. It eliminated the rotating cylinder. Ammunition was fed from a flat magazine, housed directly inside the grip, carrying 7 rounds. By automating the loading sequence and streamlining the shape of the weapon, Browning created a rugged, highly reliable platform. It served as the trusted sidearm for American troops through the muddy trenches of World War I, across the beaches of World War II, and deep into the jungles of Vietnam. Beginning in the 1980s, the military began looking for a new platform to align its ammunition standards with its NATO allies. This led to the adoption of the modern 9mm service pistol. The heavy steel construction of older pistols was replaced by lightweight polymer frames, and grips widened to accommodate a double-stack magazine. Because the 9mm is a smaller, higher-velocity round, capacity surged, letting a soldier carry 15 to 21 rounds in a single magazine. The smaller cartridge also generated less recoil, making it much easier to train a wide variety of personnel to shoot accurately. Over the course of a century, the sidearm morphed from a delicate mechanism relying on sparking flints and loose powder to self-contained brass cartridges, and finally to highly efficient recoil-operated polymer frames. This chart illustrates the sheer mathematical leap in firepower over that same timeline. What began as a single weather-dependent shot expanded to 6 rounds in a revolver, then 7 in a semi-automatic, all the way up to 21 consecutive rounds today. A soldier's primary rifle will always be their main tool of war. But the modern military pistol is the result of continuous, relentless problem-solving. It serves as a high-capacity, highly reliable insurance policy, ensuring that when the environment is harsh and primary weapons fail, a soldier is never left without a way to defend themselves.